Hi guys, I wanted to take the time to do a video that just focused on the Purl Stitch. I've noticed lately there's been a lot of questions about the stitch in different looming groups on Facebook, so I wanted to take the time to just kind of talk about it a little more and maybe give some tips and tricks to help those that are new to looming to be able to work the stitch a little easier. Now for this video, I'm going to be showing you this Purl Stitch on two different looms. I'm going to be using the Nifty Knitter loom, which is a bigger gauge loom, and I'm also going to be using my Sock Loom 2, which has a smaller gauge. I'll use this one when I want to show you what it looks like when it comes off the loom, and there's a reason for that, which I'll explain in a minute. Now for this one, like I said, it's a Nifty Knitter loom. I believe this is the 24 peg one. Sometimes on the bottom of my looms I write down how many pegs there are on it, but I guess either this one wore off or I forgot to mark it. But anyhow, I've cast it on, just E-wrap cast on for like 8 pegs just to show you. Now I chose this loom for a couple of reasons to show you. One, because of the space, the gauge in between the pegs is bigger, so I'm hoping it will show up better for what I'm doing. Also, keep in mind with this type of loom, or with any other kind of bigger gauge loom, you may need to double or triple up your yarn or use a bulky yarn in order to have the project look well when it comes down, depending on what you're doing. I decided not to double up or to use bulky yarn because I really do want you to be able to see how to do this stitch a little easier. So please remember, if you are going to do a project on this type of loom that has the bigger gauge, make sure you do up some samples with different yarns, either with doubling up or getting a bulky yarn, to see whether or not it's going to work up the way you want. So let's get into how to do the Purl Stitch. The Purl Stitch to me is one of the basic stitches that you tend to learn when you come into loom knitting. And so I've got my working yarn. What you're going to do with your working yarn is you're going to have it underneath the loops. How there's loops already on the pegs, you want it underneath. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take your tool, which I get a lot of questions about this tool. It is actually a pick from like the automotive section. I do have a review for it. It's a Sheffield brand. I got it, I think, on Amazon years ago. It came in like a 4-pack. I basically use this one for my loom knitting. I do have another one that I could use if I needed to. Anywho, let's go back over here. So we're going to do the Purl Stitch. We're going to take our tool. We're going to go through the loop. Okay, we got our working yarn. We're going to bring it over just slightly. We're going to take our tool and we're going to slowly turn it so that it creates a new loop. See, we got a nice new loop. Then you take that loop, gently remove it off the peg, and you put that new loop you created on it. And then just give it a little tug. Don't tug too hard. You don't want it to tighten it up where you can't do a knit or a purl later on. But you just give it a gentle tug. And again, all you're doing is you're taking your tool. What's great about this loom too is it has like a little groove in there, so you almost are just following that groove. But if yours doesn't, you're just going to put the tool behind that yarn, going through it, bringing over your working yarn, taking and turning it so that it creates a new loop on the top. Remove this old loop from the peg, place your new loop on. It can be tricky. Again, it's going to be a matter of how you hold the loom. Don't be afraid to kind of wiggle the loom around, getting it in the right position for you to do the stitch. And again, all it is simply doing is going through a loop that's on there, bringing over your working yarn, and then turning it so you grab it, bring it up, and move on by pulling the old loop off and the new loop goes on. And again, it's going to look different if you're doing, because this is a bigger gauge loom, so I'm not going to show you what it's going to look like because it's going to be a holy project because I should have doubled up or I should have used bulky yarn on this. But again, I hope this helps. And as you get going, you will end up being able to work it pretty fast as you get just practice. You won't even be thinking about it. You'll just be like, okay, I can do it. And then again, you're just going to be going over, flip that over, turn it up. And it works pretty fast. And again, when you get to the end of whatever row you're doing, if you're doing a flat panel, you'll end up being able to work it pretty fast. But if you don't, that's okay. Never judge the speed you should go by what others can do. Go at your own speed. You may take longer to do a stitch, and that's totally, totally fine. Don't judge by what how fast others can go. So on our last peg, again, we're bringing our loop up. And then again, when you want to work your way back, just simply take the working yarn and you go towards the back of the loom, and you're just going to re-bring it back in front to work your way back over. Doing the same thing. Working yarn underneath, making your loop, taking the old off, the new on. I'm just getting a little tangled here, so let me get untangled here. So again, working your way back is just the same as you did to work your way one way. Going through that loop you have, placing the working yarn, turning so it creates that loop, taking the old loop off, put the new loop on, and continue to the other end of the project. So I hope this helps to give you just an idea. Like, again, adjust the way you hold the loom. Maybe you might need to just update what tool you're using. Maybe a certain tool will help you better to do it. And again, I'm going to show you this on the finer gauge loom that we have. This is a sock loom 2, and it's an adjustable loom I've used in videos before. And you could tell that the space between these two pegs is bigger than the space between those. So that also means that whatever stitch you're going to do, whether it's the purl or the knit, will look bigger or smaller depending on the loom you use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast on E-wrap cast on. I'm going to work the purl stitch only until it gets past the loom so you can see what it looks like as it comes down on a project. Okay guys, I went and did just the purl stitch using the sock loom 2 so that you can see what it looks like with a finer gauge loom. And as it comes down through, you can see it basically just looks like this. And again, if you were to have it on a bigger loom like the Nifty Knitter, you would need to double up or use bulky yarn, but you would still get the same effect. And all that was different was that the cast on row was done in E-wrap knit. Everything else was purl. So this is what you would get for your textured part of your project. Now, some people have been asking me about showing the other side of a stitch. So like this is what the part, like if you were doing a hat, this is a part you would have people see. So what does it look like for the part that people wouldn't see? Well, if we flip this up, we see that it pretty much looks like an E-wrap knit. So that's pretty cool. Like if you do a hat, we'll say in this, you could almost have a reversible hat where it would have purl on one side if you want that for one day, and then just maybe you could flip it and you would have your E-wrap knit. Or if you're doing a baby blanket and you decide to do it all in purl, you would have the opposite side would be the E-wrap kind of looking knit, and you could just kind of flip the blanket back and forth to which side you want up. So again, this is what the purl looks like if you do just the purl through the stitches, and it's just a nice little texture there. Like I said, the only reason I was showing the other side was because people were kind of nosy about what the other side of a stitch does, and I don't always show it. So again, like as it's coming through, this is the side you wouldn't see in your project. This is the outer part. This is the part that you would see. But I like the purl stitch. I like using it doing it as an alternating rows with knit and purl to do like the garter stitch. That usually helps with curling. As I was working this, I was getting a little curl. Like see, it automatically was trying to curl on me because I didn't do like a garter border like I normally would on some projects where I would do a row of knit, then a row of purl, and go back and forth. So I hope this helps people that are new to looming to kind of see what the purl stitch is about. And again, when you're doing it on a finer gauge loom, this is why I say maybe practice if you're new with the bigger gauge looms first, and that could be part of the problem of new loomers getting the hang of the purl stitch, because when I move on to this one again, when you're comparing it to the Nifty Knitter, you can definitely see the difference in the spacing. So the area you have to work with is a little different. Like you're working in a tighter area. I mean, you still do the same thing where you would go through and you would go through the loop that was on the peg, move your working yarn over, and then turn and pull so you get your loop. But when you're doing a finer gauge loom, you might find, wow, this is a little more space that I have to do, but you're just doing the same thing to get your loop and put the new one onto the peg instead. So it could be sometimes that you're having trouble with it mainly because of the gauge of the loom. If you want to practice on a bigger one where you have more rooms for your hands to work and your tool to work, that may help you. But again, it's a great little simple stitch that most beginner loomers try to tackle, and I hope this video helps, and I hope everyone has a great day. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and also hit the bell icon. Otherwise, you won't get notified when I make new videos. And so again, I hope you like it, and make sure you come back for the next video.